Ohayo Sekai, good morning world. I'm Shoto Sensei. How are you guys doing? Today I'll talk about the secret key to success in language learning. But I will specifically tell you how I mastered English conversation skill and some Italian conversation skill, and also I know some words in Spanish and French and German as well. But I have some qualifications in English, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and some speaking in Italian. All right, let's get started. So, honestly speaking, I was not a good English speaker at all until I was 15 or 14. In Japan, nowadays, English learning is mandatory and you learn English at elementary school. But before, like several years ago, it was not mandatory. Instead, Japanese students would start learning English only when they are 13 or whenever as soon as they enter middle school. So now it's a good thing that it changed and they learn English from young age, but still there are problems, especially when it comes to speaking. Japanese people are not good at speaking English, even though they know lots of words. And but now I speak English, and I can teach you some tips. And now that I've taught Japanese to foreigners, I have found out some key tips. All right. So the key tip number one is, ironically though, the less vocabulary you have, the more you will be able to speak the language. Yeah, it's paradox. It's a paradox, but yeah, this the secret that I found. And there is this Japanese proverb or saying or quote, which is atama dekkachi. Atama dekkachi. The meaning of this word atama dekkachi is that you have a heavy brain. Your brain is too heavy. Okay, so as you input a lot of things, then it's making you heavy, and it's something that's bothering you to take an action. That's the meaning of this word, atama dekkachi. And I sometimes tend to be one of these situations, but I guess the problem with the Japanese people not confident in speaking English is this. So I've read some stats saying that Japanese students have average vocabulary compared to other countries, but honestly speaking, Korean students or Chinese students or Indian students are way better when it comes to speaking English. So I guess it's the lack of confidence, but also I guess it's the order of learning languages. Yeah. So, and Japanese people have this method, which is called shuhari. And one is stick to the fundamentals. Second, and practice it a lot, and then you will have your original method. So Japanese people are always true to the fundamentals, and so that's why I guess the problem with teaching Japanese to foreigners is that the Japanese teachers tend to input the vocabulary first, then second the grammars, the boring and and complicated grammars, and that will take a lot of time, like typically 2 years or 3 years, and then finally you will be able to make some sentences all of your own, and then you'll be able to speak out. But I guess this is wrong. This order is completely wrong. So the first thing you have to do is to create your own sentence with less vocabulary. Yeah, there was a video. There's a TED Talk video which changed my life. So I watched it probably when I was 20 or so, but there was this polyglot guy from New York, and he was only like 17 years old, but he was able to speak more than 20 languages. And what he did were two things: to make his own sentences, at least 20 sentences of the language that he wants to learn. So he Googled some words, because back in those days there were no AI, so he's made his research and made some sentences, like, for example, my name is Shota, my hobby is walking, and my favorite food, and things like that. Then he made at least 20 sentences, and he memorized them, and he practiced reading those sentences. And the second thing he did was to upload him practicing the language and reading the sentences on YouTube, so that he resulted in receiving lots of comments from the native speakers of, for example, Arabic, Japanese to Italian, and those words. And it actually worked. And it happened to me too. So, not sure if any of you guys have seen my first video, which I have listed now. So you cannot watch it, unfortunately. But my first video on YouTube was back in 2014, I guess. And the video was a Japanese guy speaking 5 languages. Then I introduced myself and spoke some some words in English, Italian, German, Spanish, French, I guess. I don't remember at all, because that's 10 years ago, but yeah, it really worked. It gave me the confidence to speak the language, and also I surprisingly got lots of comments from all over the world. Yeah, you are a polyglot, you're a genius. I think they say, even though I'm not really a genius. I just stuck to the method of the polyglot guy from New York. I guess his name was Tim, I guess. Yeah, but anyway, it really worked. So there was this problem both in learning and teaching in Japan. So if you are now learning Japanese from a Japanese guy, be careful. I'm not gonna say this the wrong method, but I respect them. They're experienced and they have methods too. But be careful not to focus too much on inputting vocabulary. That's gonna make your brain too heavy to speak out. Okay? So that's the first major problem that I think that most language learners face. And so actually I've already told the 2 other methods that you should do out of the episode. But second thing you should focus is that you make your own sentences on your own, not using any AIs. Okay? Now that AI has been so handy, you can do pretty much anything, right? Write your own sentences, or I could probably write my own script, or I could just use AI to pretend that Shota Sensei AI is speaking just as if Shota Sensei is actually speaking, but which I'm not gonna do, because that's just boring and it has no influence in my brain, right? Yeah, if I use AI, my brain will become less smart, right? So I usually try not to use AI. But anyway, so if you try to make your own sentence, for example, in Japanese, you have to do some research, right? How do I say my hobby is in Japanese and things like that? And then your brain will suddenly accelerate, right? And then you will collect a lot of vocabulary, right? And also you'll find out what you actually want to tell the audience. That's the point, yeah? What is your inner voice? What is something that you always care about? What is your curiosity? What is your concern? And people would like to know it, right? And you want to express it in the language that you are trying to learn. Then that's the point. So do your own research and make your own sentences, at least 20 of them, and then memorize them. Try to be like the native speaker. Yeah, try to pretend the native speaker. So yeah, imitate Shota Sensei. And so that's the second secret method, right? And the third one is to start your own podcast or start your own YouTube, just filming yourself speaking that language, okay? Then if you mention me on YouTube or Instagram, I will definitely react, or you just write down the comments on Spotify or YouTube or other podcast. Anyway, I will read the comments and I will watch you speaking and on YouTube. So definitely do that. That's the fastest method, okay? Honestly speaking, my grade at school was terrible, especially in English back in the middle school. But then I had 2 exchange students staying in my family, and it changed my life completely. So there were the first exchange student that we had was from the Netherlands, and he was fluent in English, of course, but I would say he had no Japanese vocabulary or Japanese knowledge at all. But he suddenly came in and he joined our family, and we lived in the same house. And then what happened? I found out that there was somebody in the world who knows no words and who understands nothing of what I'm saying. Then what should I do? I really try to come up with English vocabulary. Until then, I had never done it, but now I have to do it because I have to talk with him, and it actually worked. Then I tried to do some research on my physical paper dictionary, and it actually worked. How do I say taberu in English? Oh, that's to eat, and things like that. And also he would correct my pronunciation too. And with that experience, everything changed, and my point of view, my perspective has changed. You know, how do I say this in English? How would I say in this situation in English? Or everything that would come in, everything in the world, in the life, would be an input to my English. It really worked. And also, until after that experience of having an exchange student, I started to watch English movies. Okay, Before that, I would just watch movies in Japanese, probably, or maybe it was in English, but I would just read just the subtitles. But after that, I tried to listen to the native speakers as much as I can, and it actually worked. So only within probably 3 or 5 months, my English listening skill and speaking skill just boosted. it just I just couldn't believe it, and my teachers and my parents couldn't believe how I improved my English. But the problem was the vocabulary, grammar, and the fundamentals. But it was okay now that I know how to speak English, and I have heard some people speaking English. So whenever I had problems with English grammar quiz or problems, I just was able to recall the conversations that I had before with others. So he was saying the sentences in this order. So this might be a particle which will come next, and things like that. So it's important that you have this certain amount of conversations with foreigners, or this amount of the sentences that you remember, that you keep in your heart. All right. So again, these are the 3 secret methods which changed my life and which made me able to speak English, and not only English but also Italian too. Yeah. All right. So I really appreciate it if you could try those 3 methods in Japanese, and whenever you upload any media, then just mention me. All right. はい、ありがとうございますということでですね、今日はごめん、くしゃみが出るexcuse me。 そう、今日はですね、僕が言語を習得した、特に英語を話せるようになった話をしましたね。じゃあここからは少しゆっくり日本語でお話ししますよ。なんといってもやっぱりですね、話すっていうことが大事なんですよ。話し相手がいなかったとしても、この自分で文章を考えてみる、この the process of structuring がとても大事ですね。で、その structuring の中でなんか you're gonna have to do some research too, but then you have to be grammatically correct, and その時にすごくこう今までのインプットが効いてくるし、いっぱい文を作ってると、今度はこういう時なんて言うんだろうなとかね、過去形、昔の話をするときはなんて言うんだろう、未来の話をするときはどうだろう、否定の話をするときはどうだろう、これを質問するときはどうだろうっていうふうに、すごくね、脳が動くようになりますね。はい。で、もちろん話し相手がいるのが一番いいですね。この近くに住んでるといいし、僕はとても運がいいことに留学生ですね。留学生が家にいたので、それがとっても良かった。あとは今、僕の娘、5歳の娘がいるんですけど、はね、とてもラッキーです。ここ田舎なんですけど、たまたまアメリカ人の英語の先生が近くにいて、スクールをやってくれてるんですね。だからその英会話スクールに通わせてるんですけど、すごくね、いいです。だし、僕の5歳の娘は英語を話すのが大好きってなってるから、まずは話す。で、文章を、作ってみることが最初です。output first、input second ですね。そうで、input も、vocabulary はその時に足していけばいいし、あとは聞けばいいんですよ。If you don't understand a certain word, then you can just ask directly, what do you mean by this word? For example, like, if you're 例えばこう日本語で喋ってるときに、somebody says this certain word, for example, like おしぼり and おしぼりは何ですか？おしぼりって何ですか？おしぼりはどういう意味ですか？ And then he will teach you, right? Oh, just wet towels. ね、とかね、濡れたタオルですよ。Oh, then you were learning. で、it's important that you would be able to ask questions in that language that you want to learn. And then also to understand the response in the language that you want to learn. Okay? だから、日本語で聞いて、日本語で説明を聞く。それを理解する。この出来事ってすごく記憶に残るんですよ。そう。だからすごくね、その機会はいいですね。だから僕も英語で、What do you mean by とか How do you say っていうのは中学生の時いっぱい聞いてた。で、それで聞いた答えはすごくね、不思議と脳に覚えてますから、おすすめです。これはね、なんか、いいね。その言語で質問できるようになったら、もう OK。もう無限にね、上手になっていきますよ。はい。といったのがね、僕のね、語学。で、ほら、そう、スペイン語とかさ、これ。Expresiones familiares y simples de la vida cotidiana en español。ね、エスパニョールのテキストブックですけど、とか、あとイタリアとかいっぱい、僕はね、言語が大好き。ただね、もうね、6年間、ヨーロッパ行ってないんですよ。それがね、問題ですね、僕の。あと、もう一個も大きい問題があります。まだ、東南アジアに行ったことないんですね。シンガポールは一回あるか。でも、あれはもう17年前、高校生の時一回行った。でも行ってみたい。Yeah, I've been to countries in Europe, but never been to Africa, Middle East, or Southeast. In countries like Philippines, Thai, Indonesia, India, Malaysia, Papua, not a country, but Papua New Guinea, or even Australia. Never been there before. ね、まだ一回も行ったことない。から、すごく僕は行ってみたいし、興味がある。で、今、ちっちゃい子供が3人いますけど、だんだん、慣れてきて、今、子供たちも多分飛行機に、数時間は乗れるかな。だから多分、アメリカとか、ヨーロッパはまだね、多分日本から飛行機で13時間とかでしょ。多分ね、子供たち難しいかもしれないんですけど、オーストラリアとかさ、そういう国とかだったらね、とかほら、台湾とかさ、香港、韓国はすぐ行けますよね。多分3時間ぐらいで行けるのかな。3時間、4時間で行けると思うから、チャレンジしてみたいなと思っています。はい。ね、今日はすごいなんか、語学について熱く喋りましたね。ね。This episode was full of the passion on learning languages, but it actually worked. Believe me. So guys, thanks so much for watching and listening to my podcast every day. If you have any requests or questions, don't hesitate and leave them on comments. Have a great day. 良い一日を。またね。バイバイ。